Hey everybody, welcome to The Early Edge, a mentorship podcast for next generation leaders where we share insights we wish we had learned earlier in our careers.
We want to equip you to learn more, grow faster, and thrive in both your work and personal life. I'm Jay.
And I'm Jeff. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome back, everybody. We're glad to be back in the studio and today bring you a special episode that's tying back to some earlier episodes we did, Jay. We did a series on communication. We did 4 episodes, and to our listeners that may have joined us over the last 10 or so episodes, go back and listen to those because we got a lot of really good feedback on those.
Yeah, basic effective communication, different areas, including conflict and how to have influence in a room. Very good.
So today we are gonna reference a brief piece of one of those episodes, but this content is all around the importance of knowing your audience.
Read the room.
Why is that important, Jay?
Well, if we want to be people of influence, we have to understand context, time, place, and of course, what our audience cares about. Sometimes we can be very focused on what we want to communicate or our own style or agenda, and it just lands flat, and we can't really be as effective as we'd like to be unless we are good at increasing the influence, the way we influence people.
So important. I was sitting in an event this week, I'll say, and I was listening to a speaker, and this speaker was communicating in their traditional style, and it just wasn't landing with me because it was a little bit more loose, a little more dramatic, a little more touchy-feely. It wasn't very...
Because you're a cold-hearted, analytical guy.
Yes, that's right. Yes. That's right. I'm just dry and boring. No, but I do, it's interesting. I do like facts. I like the intellectual side of speakers. There's so many good books, that are based on research. So that's one of the reasons that they resonate is because they're factual. And of course, I'm sitting there like, this is not good. Totally kind of oblivious to the fact at the moment that most of the audience in the room was landing perfectly.
Yeah, there's a great story that I read a long time ago. The phenomenal human being, Mr. Rogers. He had a show from our childhood, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and he was a strong believer. He had a strong faith. He was an icon of public television in Pittsburgh for 40 years or more. And he talked about going to his local church one time and sitting in the back and just being turned off by the message of the pastor. And he was critiquing it. He's a professional communicator. He was critiquing the message in his brain. He wasn't listening. And he was just sort of walking out, grumbling about how bad that talk was. And as he walked out, there was a woman in the back row in tears. And he went up to her and said, "Hey, are you doing okay?" And she said, "I feel like that person was just speaking to me. It's exactly what I needed to hear today."
Such a great communicator. And for all of our listeners that don't know who Mr. Rogers is, Google it. When you find Eddie Murphy, watch those two. They're hilarious.
Watch those after you've watched Mr. Rogers because it will be even more funny.
Now, there was a movie that came out 4 or 5 years ago on his life.
Yeah, Tom Hanks.
So good.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, go watch that. So I finally realized that, yes, this isn't necessarily hitting me. Now, it did eventually get there. I had to remind myself that maybe I'm not the target audience. And it made me think about this topic of the importance of knowing your audience.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about 2 different settings. One is when you have time to plan for communication or when you have time to prepare to communicate a message or to try to increase your influence with somebody. Then we'll also talk about what happens in an ad hoc moment when you run into somebody in the hallway or you meet a customer for the first time. How do you increase your influence in that environment as well? So let's start first with the planned communication. So I think you have a really cool framework for thinking about getting ready to communicate with somebody and how to have the most influence.
This is the piece that we'll go back and we did a little bit more exhaustive view of this in an earlier episode, but here's something that I learned early in my career. I had a class, not at the University of Georgia, but at Georgia State. We won't make any comparisons there. It is football season.
Both football powerhouses.
And this course was a communication course taught by an Apple executive. Now, we're talking way before the iPhone. And this course was all about learning how to communicate And he taught us to do 5 things when you're planning a communication. And those 5 things are: first, who's your audience? Write that down. Who's your audience? Write down everything you know about the audience. Second thing is, what's your objective? Am I trying to get a decision? Am I trying to plant a seed? Am I trying to influence? What's my objective?
So why do you need to know your objective beforehand?
I wonder.
7 habits of highly effective people.
Intentionality. There's so many reasons.
Correct.
If you want to get anywhere, right, you better know what some of your objectives are in life.
I point that out because many people fly a bit by the seat of their pants, and we do need to be intentional about thinking about what I want the outcome of this to be if we're going to be highly influential. So I didn't want to skip over that because it's so important. So sorry to interrupt, but
no, that's
that
good.
Would matter so much to me.
Who's your audience? Write that down. What's your objective? Write that down. What's the common ground in this? Sometimes you'll hear WIFM, what's in it for me, or what's in it for the audience. What is the common ground? Why would they care to listen to whatever it is I'm about to communicate?
Yep.
What's in it for them? Fourth thing is there any other background that sets this up? Are there facts or past situations or future state that we're trying to get to? What's the background? And the fifth thing is, then what's the action I want from my audience? It could be a superior, it could be an executive, could be a team. What action am I trying to get? Those are the 5 things. And I use those all the time. If I'm trying to influence or get a decision by a person, or if I'm going into a presentation with a group of people, maybe there's 6 people sitting around a conference room and I am pitching something, I write those 5 things down ahead of time.
So how do you manage? You talked about earlier you were in a setting where the speaker was not connecting with you, partly because of your learning styles or your preferences versus theirs. How do you guide our audience in dealing with those things, if you know the audience to some degree?
Any prep you can do in advance is always helpful. Your past experience in working or communicating or meeting with that person, if you've never met with the person or whoever you're about to present to, and others in the business have, go ask, what are they like? How do they process information?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to is, what are you wanting to know? One's how they process information. What else?
I think the two things that always come to mind for me, and there's just an exercise that I've done with leadership teams before around communication preferences and sorting styles, and it tests for about 8 different things. Two of those are, here are 2 of those. One is, how do they process information? Are they visual, auditory, or kinesthetic? Kinesthetic, I had to look that up when somebody said that to me. Kinesthetic is kind of look and feel. I'd rather experience it to learn it. Visual, of course, they like to see it to understand it. Auditory, they can listen to it and process it. Most of the world, most of those in the U.S. are visual.
Got it. Yeah, I would imagine. So let's use the iPhone as an example. Most people would want to see it at least, and some would want to use it or have it in their hand.
Yes.
Versus just hearing about it.
Yeah. So if you're pitching an idea or trying to get a decision on something, if you know your audience is visual, have a visual, have some picture that you can talk to so they can comprehend what you're trying to piece together and make a pitch for.
Yeah. This is why PowerPoint expertise is so important, because you can kill somebody with PowerPoint text. And we've visited this topic before, or you can make it compelling visually with the right kind of information. So I love those. Is that sorting styles?
That's one sorting style.
Okay.
The second one I'll give real quick is what I call large chunk, small chunk.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And that's, I'm going to give a 40-minute pitch I'm in a conference room with 6 people. I'm going to give a pitch, and the key people in the room that I'm trying to influence the most, do they like to hear the big picture first and then the detail, or do they like to really quickly get to the detail?
Yeah.
And knowing that can really ensure that your audience stays in kind of connection with you or aligned with you, or stays clued in and is listening well in the first few minutes. Because if you lose them in the first few minutes, you may lose them for the whole time.
Yeah, that's so good. And I imagine you can learn over time if you have repeated opportunities. You can also pivot in the middle of the event if you're paying attention to how it's landing or not landing.
Yes.
So that requires caring, observation, knowing, reading the signs, body language, etc. And some people are more analytical, for example. They want data, they want real numbers. Some are more conceptual. They want ideas, they want emotion, they want connection to a purpose. There really are many different ways that people can be influenced. And as young professionals, being intentional about figuring that out will set you apart.
And I'm visual and I'm large chunk. So, you know, the more that you and your team know these things, especially if it's your team or maybe your manager, an executive that you're pitching to, the more that you can know these things, the better off you're going to have at landing your ideas and influencing those people.
Yeah, it reminds me of a conversation my wife, Abby, and I have frequently. She has come to understand my style for making a purchase decision and has become very patient with the way I need to do it. And what I like to do is to gather information on multiple options before I make a decision. I like a certain amount of data. I don't want pages and pages of minutia. I want the key points that matter to me, and I want those for multiple choices. So if I'm going to buy a car or I'm going to buy a new table saw, I want to understand the different choices I have and the key data metrics that matter to me for those. And I would like to compare them versus different options. And then I would like time to process them and digest the information and make sure that I feel good about the choice. And sometimes what I need to do is go get the information for 5 different cars, and then I'll make no decision and I won't make a change. And she wonders, why would I waste my time doing that? Because I'm wondering, and then when I get the information, it satisfies my curiosity. And if it's not compelling enough, then I may not make a change.
If the purchase is a under $5, let's say donut, do you need all those facts, or you know going in what you need?
It's a very good point. Donuts, very clearly, I know what I want, and I'm very willing to try new things on an impulse when it comes to donuts.
Okay, all right.
There is a very good distinction is that I call that table stakes. What are the stakes of the decision if I make it incorrectly? If I buy the wrong donut,
right.
I didn't get the dopamine hit I was looking for from the chocolate cake donut, which is the best donut in history. If it's
debatable,
that'll be a different episode. If it's a low stakes decision, I can be impulsive and don't care. If it's higher stakes, either a bigger cost or something I really care about that I want to get right the first time, I will go through that evaluation process.
And that point right there ties right back to this kind of preparation and planning around knowing your audience, because the bigger the ask, the more preparation you should do.
Excellent point.
You know, if you're just asking for something that's, I don't know, you want to buy some supplies, great. But if you're making a big pitch on a big idea that's going to require money or time or a lot of people to be committed to this, you better know your audience. You better do more prep.
So for the sorting preferences topic, if you want to help somebody to learn more about that, what would you recommend they go do, study, look for, Google to understand sorting preferences? Because I think that's a really cool topic. Where would you guide someone to go?
I learned pieces of this from an exercise that a firm called Leading Concepts did. It was an Army Ranger style 4 days in the woods training event that was probably the most intense and most life applicable thing I've ever experienced. Some of the concepts came from there, so I can't take credit for a few that came from there. Others are just things I picked up over the years. I don't know if you Google sorting preferences, what you get.
You probably could Google, how do we influence people or exchange? How do people process information?
Yeah, communication, processing, sorting styles, things like that.
Maybe we'll offer that resource later. So I think that's really good. Is there anything else on planned or prepared presentation or influence that you'd recommend?
I think it's tied back to the concept of knowing your audience. If you are naturally too dry, you're facts and intellectual. Let's say that you're all about the facts, you're all about the intellectual side of the convincing, the argument, the case, the pitch, whatever it is, and there's no excitement or passion, there's no inflection in your voice, but the audience needs that for whatever reason, based on the idea you're pitching, based on who the audience is. Sometimes that can come across as just too dry and lacking passion, and that's kind of hard to motivate the audience you're trying to motivate and influence. The flip of that is, if you're too emotionally excited and don't have any facts or figures, that can come across as a little bit overly selling and a little bit desperate and maybe unprepared too.
Yeah, I think the balance is the right information to back up the thing you were trying to do or say, along with some version of an emotional connection to a why, to a personal benefit, to what's in it for me or how does it affect me. I think that's the right balance. And again, as you learn about the audience, especially if it's a boss, for example, that you're presenting to or talking with or meeting with every other week, you'll begin to know how to increase your influence with them because they want big chunk, little chunk, or they want lots of data, or they want the big conceptual, emotional story. So the more at bats you get, the more you can prepare and to connect with them. It does require you to be observant, be self-aware, know your natural tendencies, and understand what they need so you can do it more effectively. I'll close this piece in one story. Personally, I joined a board of a company a few months ago, and this is a family business, family-owned business, and there are non-family members who are in the management team and sit on the board, and then they're family members. And preparing to present information to this group is interesting because you have family members who are not every day in the business and are not experts in this field. And then you have professionals from this industry who are very experienced in this field, who know the jargon and know things, at the back of their hand. So preparing the right level of information requires some thoughtfulness about who each audience member is and what they care about, which points back to your first part, and that is, what do we want to accomplish with this thing? Some decisions in that board meeting are going to get made by the family members, and some of the decisions are going to be just communicating information to the family members, and the professional management team is going to make the decision. So if you just did the same approach for every bit of information or every agenda item, you might create some ineffective interaction. So knowing who you're talking to is so crucial in that room, especially, or we're going to have 8-hour board meetings.
The picture in my mind in working with various teams and thinking of either a monthly or quarterly board report or some kind of report out, I've seen where sometimes there's a one-pager and sometimes there's 80 pages, and your story's great because there are probably some of those members in that board, maybe the family members, I'm assuming here, that the 80 pages would just be like, what are you giving me?
Yes. I don't understand it. I don't want to know this. I don't need to know this. What do you want me to know?
The one pager for those that are in the business every day would be like, there's nothing here.
Yeah. No meat.
So find the right balance. I don't know if this is true or not, but boy, some of these AI tools can automatically connect now into ERPs and accounting systems.
Yeah.
And being able to quickly say, give me a one-page summary of our year-to-date results, and then give me the 20-page summary with charts and graphs and stats. Maybe you can, provide two different reports of the same data to different audiences sometimes.
Well, we're going there together this week.
Oh,
so
great.
You can help out.
Okay, great. Yeah. Love it.
Well, let's move on to the other main environment where interaction matters, and that's the ad hoc, meet them in the hallway or first interaction with a new customer. You're not preparing. It's not an official interaction. It's an ad hoc that took place. How do you make sure that your influence is maximized in that setting?
You have a story recently of, I think it's a bank example, you were considering moving accounts.
Yeah. So I have a little frustration with my current large national bank, and I thought I would try to send my business to a local regional bank. And so I called a couple of them, and I reached this really nice person who was helping me, and we had a good conversation, except she would talk for minutes on end without giving me a chance to say, I understand what you mean, or I have a different question.
Land the plane, please.
Land the plane is perfect. And I generally am pretty patient, and I became impatient because she talked for 5 minutes past the point that I needed her to on one specific question I had. And she began to lose me and began to change my desire to follow up and get more information. What she was telling me is what I wanted to hear. The services they offered were suited well to my business needs. And so I have interest in learning more, except I can't imagine I'll look forward to meeting her in person to actually land the plane.
Yes. I went into the Apple store, so that story makes me think of something that happened to me yesterday, which is a positive version of this. I went into the Apple store, and the good news is Ty, I think was his name, that helped me, was super nice. I went in to upgrade a device of mine that was 5 years old. It's not my iPhone. I'm a little bit more current on the iPhone, but sometimes my watch was getting a little slow. So I went in, and he asked me early on if I was interested in their business services and a business account. And I said, well, tell me a little bit more. And he gave me a little bit more and then kind of read, am I down with this? Am I in a hurry? Am I not, or whatever? He did a great job of giving me just what I needed and not more.
Yeah. The principle here is that bank manager risks losing my business because she was not at all aware of the situation.
This was on the phone, not in person.
This was on the phone.
A little bit harder, but still important.
That's a good distinction. And I tried to give verbal signals that I was ready to move on. That was enough. I got it. Okay, good. Thank you.
It's a good one.
Yeah. And then what I ended up having to do is say, I almost used her name.
That's okay.
Let's call her Barb. What I said was, Barb, we can move past this one now. I know everything I need to know about this. And that was 5 minutes longer than it needed to be. I had to interrupt her to do it. And I assume positive intent. She was trying to be helpful and was helpful to some degree. She was doing her best. What she wasn't doing is paying attention to the audience at all and reading the room.
I don't know if you ever have this happen, but I do have a couple of individuals that I work with, and I won't mention their name because this might bother them or offend them, or they may get their feelings hurt. But I will many times have back-to-back days, and I'm trying to communicate with various people that I don't have on my calendar, but are either asking something of me or I'm trying to get something to them. And I'll have a meeting in 5 minutes before the hour. So 5 minutes early, meeting ends. I've got 5 minutes, and I will call that person and I will say, hey, I wanted to get back to you. I only have 5 minutes. I have a meeting at 2:00 or whenever it is. And they don't even process that.
So what do?
They start talking and asking questions and just go on and on and on and on and on without any respect for the clock or memory of my comment of 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That is just, again, listen, pay attention. You talk about the individual that will stop by and maybe lean against the door.
This was back when we had real offices and people were in office more frequently. And I guess that's changing now. I would call this person the door leaner. In this setup, I had my back to the door because my computer monitor was facing the other direction. And they would come in and lean in the doorway and start talking about their weekend. Or maybe it was a business thing, but I would be actively typing and engaging with my computer screen, and they would come in, and it wasn't, hey, when you have a minute, can we talk? It was just start talking, lean, and keep talking. And early in my career, I would try to overemphasize the body language to say, I don't want to talk to you right now. And sometimes they would get it and sometimes they wouldn't. Now what I do is, trying to be a little more effective and more respectful, I will just immediately say, hey, I need 5 minutes to finish this. Can I come get you when I'm ready? And try to cut it off in a respectful and healthy way. But that's another idea of a person that I don't look forward to engaging with. And it doesn't mean they are wrong. It just means our styles are different. So let's give our audience some tips on the ad hoc interaction. And to me, the first one is situational awareness. Is what's the context here? What does this person have going on? How can I be most effective? You can think about, what do I want to get out of this interaction? But sometimes it's bump in the hallway with your boss or your boss's boss. How do you optimize that interaction when that takes place? And you can either increase your influence with them by how you interact, or decrease your influence, or increase your brand with them, or decrease your brand with them. So situational awareness is what's happening right now. What do they have going on? What do I have going on? And why would I say anything?
What comes to mind for me is first use your eyes and your ears, then use your mouth.
So good.
So use your eyes and your ears. Where are they walking? Are they walking fast? Are they walking slow? Do they have people with them? Do they seem like they're in a rush? What are they talking about? Just use your eyes and your ears, and usually that will tell you whether or not they have a few minutes or they don't.
That's excellent. I love that. That's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Something
two
like
eyes
that.
and 1 mouth.
I think so.
Right?
Yeah.
Listen and observe more than we talk. That's a really good one. And I have found myself, especially earlier in my career, when I got some time with the boss, I would go word vomit. Like, I have a few minutes here and I'm going to just rapid fire. And I finally caught myself and I realized that when my speech was sped up, I was trying to get more than the situation allowed.
Yes.
I still very vividly remember sitting next to my boss on a plane and trying to take advantage of that time. And he looked over and said, I'm going to shut my eyes for a little bit right now.
Wow.
And this was 30 years ago. And I remember it vividly. Well, it was kind because I was blathering on and it was not reading the room at all. And I didn't take offense to it. I was like, oh man, I have to get better at paying attention to what's happening around here.
I mean, that ties to just understanding the audience, and are they an introvert, an extrovert, and how do I generally think they're going to be if I blab for 20 minutes and don't even give them a chance to get a word in? Yeah.
Conversely, one of the things I can default to that isn't effective for influence is I will get direct and fact-based really quickly, action orientation very fast. And sometimes the audience needs to be brought along emotionally with a story, explain the why, ask them some questions, bring them into it. And that to me feels slow and inefficient. But the reality is if I bulldoze them with my action-oriented facts and directness, they're lost. They won't care. They won't want to do what I'm asking them to do or hoping they will do. I have to pay attention to the needs of the audience, even if it feels uncomfortable for me.
When I think of ad hoc here, I think of hallway. I think of stopping by to say hello, somebody's office.
Answer a call. So your boss calls you. And
answer a call that's not scheduled, something like that. Yeah, that's a good one.
So self-awareness, situational awareness. What's the quality or the depth of the relationship I have with that person? Because I may have a casual interaction where, we have a pretty good relationship, so I can be more flippant and kind of cut to the chase, or I can ask a more personal question. So what's the nature of the relationship? And then your emotional intelligence and theirs. How aware are you and how much do you care about how you affect them personally, interpersonally, emotionally? More EQ makes you more effective generally at reading the situation and the people.
To me, there's nothing wrong with, after using eyes and ears, to say, using your words, just give them a bit of a setup on what it is you're after here.
Yeah, good.
Meaning, if it's just about saying, hey, and how was your weekend? Say, hey, how was your weekend? See how they respond. And if you're not sure, just then say, have you got a couple minutes? I want to tell you something that happened to me this weekend.
Yeah. Is now a good time? Yeah. How you doing? You got a minute?
Or if you're trying to run a new idea by somebody, then say, hey, I've got a really good idea that just hit me. Do you have 5 minutes? Yep. Just be specific. And that makes it easier for them to say, yes, it's perfect time, or no, it's a bad time. Can we come back this afternoon?
Yes. And so I think the parting thought on this one is, don't leave your interactions with people thinking, ugh, I really don't want to see them again. Because I really don't feel like going to see that branch manager because I know it's going to be a long and arduous conversation. So be someone who leaves people wanting more and thinks highly of your last interaction with them.
And this probably is unfair as we wrap up here, but think about how you come across to, like, some people are known as positive, some people are known as negative people. And a lot of times the people that stop by or call, randomly or unscheduled, when I just know they complain all the time or talk about other people, I don't want you to stop by. I don't want you to call. So be aware. That's the self-awareness piece of your tendency there, because that can also influence your relationships.
Well, this will be my first key takeaway is debrief interactions you have and say, Did that go as well as I wanted it to go? I will tell you, when my boss on the plane had to say, you know what, I'm going to shut down for a few minutes because you're, parenthetically, you're crushing me and you're just word vomiting all over me. I need to get some time away from you. I debriefed that. I thought about that, and it changed forever how I handled one-on-one interactions. Now, did I mess up many after? Yes, but I started to pay much more attention to those interactions. So certainly in the planned presentations or interactions, debrief those. But on the ad hoc, especially when it's a stakeholder that's very important to you, a boss, a key coworker, a family member, whatever, debrief those and say, did I maximize my influence in that interaction? What could I do differently?
Next takeaway would be back to investing the proper amount of time based on what your objective is. If you're presenting to a group of 6 people in a conference room for an hour, you probably need more, and it's a big idea, you're going to need more time. So balance the time preparation with the objective.
Yeah, that's good. I'll say self-awareness is so important, and it takes a little personal study. Are you more long-winded? Are you more of a gabber? Are you more fact-based and too direct? What is your natural default style? And how can you learn to flex into other people's style? So you have to know yourself first before you can learn where to flex.
We talked about the common ground or what's in it for them. If you're presenting to somebody that you've never presented to, maybe it's a prospect, maybe it's a client, you've never met them, you're not going to be able to go get a bunch of information. Look them up on LinkedIn, find out where they went to school, find some common ground, because when you start that conversation, it's going to be best if you can start it with something that you can collaborate on before you go right to the core topic of work.
Yep, that's great. Last one is hone your skills at observing and reading people quickly. If you have an ad hoc interaction that you had no time to prepare for, and it's the first interaction with a customer that you ran into at a conference, surprisingly, you can begin to read the cues right away about what their sorting styles are. Do they like data? Are they long-winded and interpersonally effusive? Are they quick and fact-based? You can start to observe those things and learn to grasp that reasonably quickly. But it takes some study, it takes some practice, and you can have some fun with it. When you're at the airport next time with a friend, watch people, observe people, and see if you can figure out what their styles are and take a guess at how they might want to interact.
Sounds like some opportunity to gamble and bet a little bit and have some fun.
Perhaps, maybe. Well, that sounds like a really good early edge for the week.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening to The Early Edge, a mentorship podcast for next generation leaders. If you have feedback or would like to submit questions or a topic idea, email us at earlyedge@reddogadvisors.com
or earlyedge@altaimpact.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please follow, subscribe, rate, and review. See you next time.